Commander Lyrax's scales shimmered blue with amusement as he studied the holographic projection of Earth. The third planet from an unremarkable yellow star shouldn't have warranted such attention, but something about these humans had caught the unified system's interest. Primitive transportation networks, inefficient energy consumption, atmospheric degradation from industrial processes, he noted, dictating observations to the ship's memory core. Classic pre-unification development pattern. Behind him, Science Officer Tila's skin flushed a troubled purple. The slender xenobiologist had been monitoring Earth for 3 solar cycles, and something didn't align with standard evolutionary models. "Commander, I've identified another anomaly in their development timeline," she said, her 4-fingered hands manipulating the data display. 200 local years ago, they were using steam power and crude combustion engines. Now they've achieved limited space travel and quantum communication. Lyrax dismissed her concern with a flick of his primary tentacle. Many species experience technological acceleration curves. Not like this, Tila insisted, bringing up comparative charts. The Javorians took 800 cycles to achieve similar advancement. We required 500. Your point, Science Officer. They adapt unusually quickly, sir. And they do so under pressure. Every major technological leap corresponds with some crisis. War, resource depletion, disease. The commander's skin rippled with mild irritation. The Unified Council had already classified humans as a Category 3 acquisition target. His mission parameters were clear. Assess, infiltrate, and prepare for integration into the resource extraction network. Tila's observations were irrelevant to the operational objective. Prepare the cultural interface protocols, he ordered. Standard approach vector. Minimal visibility. Sir, Tila pressed, recommend we adjust standard protocols. These beings. That will be all, Science Officer. On Earth, Dr. Maya Patel shivered as she stepped outside the Arecibo Observatory's main facility. Puerto Rico's normally warm evening had turned unseasonably cold, matching her mood. For 3 weeks, her instruments had been detecting unusual signal patterns, brief, structured bursts that appeared and disappeared at precise intervals. Still chasing ghosts, Maya? Dr. Harrison asked, his tone somewhere between concern and condescension. The patterns are non-random, Jeff. Something is probing our communication satellites. She handed him her tablet displaying signal analytics. Look at the frequency shifts. They're too precise to be natural phenomena. Harrison scanned the data, frowning. Even if you're right, it's probably just some new military satellite they haven't told us civilians about. That's what I thought too. So I called some contacts at NASA and the ESA. She pulled up another screen. Nobody's claiming responsibility for these signals, and they're appearing simultaneously at multiple points around Earth orbit. Later that evening, Maya's secure phone chirped with an incoming call. The ID showed only Dodlazen. Dr. Patel. Captain James Chin, Defense Intelligence Agency. I understand you've been tracking some unusual signal patterns. Maya straightened. Yes. For 3 weeks now. My reports keep getting redirected or ignored. They're not being ignored, Doctor. They're being classified. Chen's voice was calm, but carried an undertone of urgency. I'm assembling a small team to investigate these anomalies. Your name came highly recommended. By whom? That's classified too, I'm afraid. What matters is that you've noticed something others have missed. We need people who see patterns where others see noise. As they spoke, Maya's monitoring equipment registered a new alert. The signal patterns had changed, growing stronger and more complex. Captain Chin, something's happening. The signals, they're intensifying. I'm sending a transport to bring you to our facility. Pack for a few days. And Dr. Patel, tell no one where you're going. As Maya gathered her equipment, the night sky above Arecibo briefly shimmered with a distortion that shouldn't have been possible, a ripple in space that vanished as quickly as it had appeared. First contact was no longer a theoretical possibility. It had already begun. and humanity remained unaware that they were being watched, assessed, and sadly underestimated. The military transport touched down at an unmarked facility nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Dr. Maya Patel stepped onto the tarmac, clutching her equipment case against the pre-dawn chill. Captain Chen waited at the entrance, his posture military precise, but his expression open. "Welcome to Lookout," he said, extending his hand. "Sorry for the secrecy, but what you've discovered has significant implications." Inside, Maya gasped. What had appeared to be a small research outpost from outside opened into a massive underground complex humming with activity. Dozens of specialists worked at advanced monitoring stations, tracking something on massive displays. "We've been detecting anomalies for 6 months," Chen explained, leading her through security checkpoints. "Gravitational microfluctuations, atmospheric disturbances, and now your signal patterns. 6 months. Why wasn't the scientific community informed?" Chen's expression tightened. Politics. Some officials feared public panic. Others didn't believe the data. By the time consensus formed, the phenomena had expanded to 27 locations globally. They entered a circular room where international representatives engaged in heated debate. A severe woman with silver-streaked hair noticed their arrival and approached. "Dr. Patel, I'm Director Kamala Mosu, United Nations Special Committee. Your signal analysis finally convinced the Security Council to take this seriously." Maya studied the global map dominating the center display. Red markers indicated anomaly clusters over major cities and key infrastructure. "They're not just observing," she realized. "They're gathering intelligence, strategically." "That's our assessment," Nwosu confirmed. "The question is why, and more importantly, when they'll reveal themselves." As if answering her question, every electronic device in the facility simultaneously emitted a harmonic tone. Displays flickered, then stabilized to show the same image. A geometric symbol slowly rotating. "It's happening," Chen whispered. The symbol dissolved into a humanoid figure with silvery skin and elongated features. When it spoke, its lips moved slightly out of sync with the words. "People of Earth, I am emissary Velen of the Unified Systems. We come in peace and friendship to welcome you to the greater galactic community." Within hours, the world changed forever. News outlets broadcast nothing else. Religious leaders issued statements of calm or proclamations of end times. Military forces went to high alert while political leaders scrambled to form a unified response team. At Lookout, Maya worked feverishly to analyze the alien transmission technology. "It's elegant," she told Chen, examining the signal pattern. "They're using our own satellite network to amplify their broadcast." "Meaning they've already infiltrated our systems." "Completely. But there's something else." She highlighted a secondary data stream embedded in the transmission. "This isn't just communication. They're scanning while broadcasting, gathering data on our reactions, our technology." 3 days later, Maya joined the hastily assembled first contact team at the United Nations. As diplomats prepared for the initial meeting, she noticed something in the translation software provided by the aliens. "The language matrix has emotional components," she explained to Chen, who had been assigned as security liaison. "But they're categorizing human expressions incorrectly. Fear is labeled as submission, curiosity as compliance." Chen frowned. "They're misrating us, or deliberately mistranslating to their advantage." When the Unified Systems delegation entered the General Assembly Hall, Maya studied them carefully. Commander Lyrax led with confident strides while Science Officer Tila moved with hesitant grace. The commander's scales shimmered with bright confidence as he offered advanced medical knowledge and energy technology in exchange for cultural immersion rights. Later, Tila approached Maya during a recess, her scales a muted purple. "Your species adapts quickly," she observed, voice low. "Most need generations to accept new concepts. Humans are naturally curious," Maya replied carefully. "Curiosity can be dangerous," Tila whispered, glancing at her commander, "especially for assets being evaluated for optimal utilization." Maya maintained her pleasant expression, but her mind raced. The translator had converted Tila's final phrase to friends being welcomed, but Maya had been analyzing the aliens' actual language patterns. She knew what Tila had really said. They weren't guests. They were targets. Operation Trojan Horse is now active, Director Nwosu announced to the secure conference room beneath the UN building. Representatives from 12 nations nodded grimly as classified briefing documents were distributed then collected after review. Maya glanced at Captain Chen, who remained expressionless. 48 hours had passed since Tila's warning, and the world's leaders had made an unprecedented decision. Appear cooperative while secretly preparing for potential conflict. The Unified Systems delegation believes we're competing for their favor, Nwosu continued. We'll maintain that illusion while gathering intelligence and analyzing their technology. The Chinese representative raised a hand. Our scientists report difficulties with the alien mathematics. Their numerical base and logic structures are fundamentally different from ours. That's by design. Maya interjected, pulling up comparison charts on the main display. They're introducing concepts in a deliberately complex framework to slow our understanding. Yet you've already deciphered their communication protocols, noted the Russian defense minister. Maya shifted uncomfortably. I had help. A team of linguistics graduate students and teenage programming champions approached problems differently than our senior scientists. They don't try to translate alien concepts into existing human frameworks. They build new frameworks. Outside the secure facility, the public face of First Contact progressed with orchestrated enthusiasm. Cultural exchanges were broadcast globally. Commander Lyrax and his delegation toured landmarks, expressing practiced amazement at human achievements while scanning everything with devices disguised as ceremonial ornaments. In a Geneva research center, Dr. Akira Tanaka led the reverse engineering division, examining the gifts of medical technology. His team made a critical discovery during the night shift. The cellular regeneration device contains dormant nanotrackers, he reported to Nwosu over secure channels. When activated, they'd map all human infrastructure and transmit data back to their fleet. Similar discoveries emerged worldwide. The British found monitoring algorithms in energy grid upgrades. The Brazilians detected atmospheric sampling mechanisms in water purification systems. Each gift concealed sophisticated surveillance technology. Meanwhile, Maya implemented a different strategy. During cultural exchange sessions, she began introducing the aliens to human games and entertainment. This is chess, she explained to Tila while Commander Lyrax was occupied elsewhere. It's a strategic simulation of ancient warfare. Tila's scales fluttered with interest as Maya demonstrated the movements and explained each piece's function. Your military simulations are openly shared, Tila asked, confused. Chess isn't classified. Children play it. Children practice warfare strategies. It's more about logical thinking and anticipating your opponent's moves, Maya explained, capturing Tila's bishop with her knight. Humans find intellectual challenges entertaining. In subsequent sessions, Maya introduced poker, which completely baffled the aliens. The concept of bluffing, deliberately misrepresenting one's position, seemed to violate their cultural norms. Your communication includes intentional deception for recreational purposes, Lyrax asked, his scales rippling with disturbed patterns. It's part of the game's strategy, Maya explained innocently. Reading opponents, managing risk, occasional misdirection. That evening, Captain Chen received Maya's encrypted report. They have no concept of bluffing, she wrote. Their species evolved with transparent physiological responses. Their skin coloration reveals emotional states. They can't conceive of hiding intentions behind a neutral expression, which gives us a critical advantage. Across the globe, humanity's resistance silently organized while presenting a facade of eager cooperation. When alien sensors mapped major military installations, they registered exactly what humans wanted them to see. Conventional armaments already known to the unified systems through orbital scanning. What remained invisible were the newly established underground facilities where engineers worked around the clock, adapting alien technology to human systems and developing countermeasures based on their growing understanding of unified vulnerabilities. In orbit, Commander Lyrax reported to his superiors, integration proceeding optimally. Native species showing appropriate deference and technological dependency. Only Tila harbored growing concerns as she observed humans mastering alien concepts with unsettling speed, and the strange way they smiled without their skin changing color at all. The dawn sky over Geneva erupted with prismatic light as the unified system's main fleet dropped their cloaking fields. 12 massive vessels, each nearly 2 kilometers long, took position over major population centers worldwide. Smaller craft deployed in geometric formations, their hulls reflecting sunlight in blinding flashes. In the UN emergency chamber, screens displayed similar scenes from Beijing, Moscow, Washington, and New Delhi. Maya watched as Commander Lyrax's diplomatic facade evaporated, his scales now a predatory crimson. "Your world has been selected for integration into the unified systems," he announced, all pretense of friendship gone. "Resistance is inadvisable and unnecessary. Compliance will be rewarded with preservation of essential cultural elements and minimal population adjustment." Director Mosu stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral. "Commander, we valued our cultural exchange. Surely there's no need for military displays." "The display is standard protocol," Lyrax replied dismissively. "Your species responds to visual demonstrations of technological superiority. Our psychological models indicate this approach minimizes resistance." Above London, the lead vessel emitted a low-frequency pulse that rippled outward. Lights flickered and died across the city. Communications went silent. Similar electromagnetic disruptions spread across targeted cities worldwide. Or so it seemed. In the hardened facility beneath Lookout, Captain Chen monitored the global situation board as reports streamed in from hidden nodes. "Faraday protocols holding," he confirmed. "All strategic systems preserved. Civilian infrastructure experiencing expected disruptions for authenticity." Director Mosu nodded. "Initiate Hydra response." Across the globe, seemingly disabled military bases suddenly illuminated with backup systems. Defense installations thought primitive by alien standards revealed hidden capabilities. Satellite networks the aliens believed compromised began transmitting data on unified fleet positions using frequencies discovered in Maya's analysis of their communication blind spots. In orbit, Lyrax received increasingly confused reports. Primary electromagnetic suppression ineffective at multiple targets, his tactical officer reported, scales pulsing anxious blue. Human communication networks remain partially operational using outdated analog technology our dampeners didn't account for. "Deploy ground forces as planned," Lyrax ordered. "Their resistance is disorganized and primitive." Smaller craft descended toward strategic locations, expecting minimal opposition. Instead, they encountered precision countermeasures. Targeting systems designed to penetrate advanced shielding found themselves confused by simple reflective materials dispersed in the atmosphere. Navigation arrays accustomed to precise spatial coordinates struggled against localized gravity disruptions based on technology reverse-engineered from the aliens' own gifts. "Impossible," Lyrax muttered as reports of failed landings multiplied. On his command display, a landing craft designated for Washington's capture suddenly went offline. Similar losses appeared in rapid succession across the tactical grid. "Sir," his second-in-command reported, "humans are using modified versions of our own weapon signatures. They've adapted our technology against us." In the skies above Tokyo, Wing Commander Hiroshi Tanaka led a squadron of fighters that should have been grounded by the alien EMP. Instead, they executed maneuvers that confused alien targeting systems, flying patterns no sensible pilot would attempt, sacrificing efficiency for unpredictability. "Target locked," Tanaka confirmed as his heads-up display highlighted a vulnerability in the alien craft's propulsion system, a flaw identified through analysis of their own demonstration flights during the cultural exchange. When he fired, the missile contained components built using alien metallurgical techniques revealed during their technological gifts. The projectile bypassed defensive shields calibrated to stop conventional human weapons. As explosions blossomed against the alien vessel's hull, Maya's voice reached Commander Lyrax through his own communication system. "You study our technology," she said calmly, "but not our history. Humans have been deceiving each other for millennia. We've had plenty of practice." Lyrax's scales flashed pale with shock as he realized the truth. The unified systems hadn't been evaluating a potential conquest. They had been revealing their weaknesses to a dangerously adaptive adversary. 3 weeks into what global media dubbed the incursion, humanity's response had evolved from simple defense to something the unified systems had never encountered before: adaptive resistance. Every tactic the aliens deployed was analyzed, countered, and improved upon with unsettling speed. In a repurposed subway tunnel beneath Paris, Dr. Elise Dubois surveyed her makeshift laboratory, where university students worked alongside veteran engineers. What they lacked in resources, they made up for in creativity. "The alien shield modulation changes every 43 seconds, she explained to visiting military officials. But there's a pattern in the frequency shifts that becomes predictable after the 5th cycle. Her lead assistant, a 19-year-old physics prodigy, demonstrated their solution: a crude-looking but remarkably effective disruption device cobbled together from modified cell phones and salvaged alien components. "We call it the tuning fork," the young man explained, his eyes bright despite days without proper sleep. "It anticipates the shield's resonance pattern and generates a counter-frequency." Similar innovations emerged worldwide. In Lagos, agricultural drones were reprogrammed to disperse reflective particles that confused alien sensors. In Seoul, a gaming company repurposed their motion capture technology to predict and track alien patrol patterns. Commander Lyrax's scales had settled into a permanent anxious blue as he addressed the Unified Council via secure transmission. "Human resistance exceeds all projections," he reported, struggling to maintain composure. "Their adaptation rate defies evolutionary models. They're using children to develop countermeasures." "Children?" a council elder questioned. "Immature specimens with incomplete cognitive development," Lyrax clarified. "Yet they approach problems without established mental constraints. Their solutions are unconventional but effective." Science Officer Tila stood silently behind him, her scales shifting between concern and something the council might have recognized as admiration had they been paying attention. Meanwhile, at Lookout Facility, Maya worked with Captain Chen to compile a comprehensive database of alien physiological responses. They had discovered that the unified species' transparent emotional signaling, their color-changing scales, provided tactical advantages. "They can't help revealing their intentions," Maya explained during a briefing. "When preparing an attack, their dorsal scales flash amber. When retreating, pale green pulses along their flanks." Director Nwosu nodded. "We've distributed infrared filters calibrated to these color signatures. Our forces now anticipate their tactical shifts before they execute." In orbit, the situation had reached a stalemate. While the unified fleet maintained superior firepower, they found themselves unable to utilize it effectively against human targets that refused to mass in predictable concentrations. "Their warfare doctrine is incomprehensible," Lyrax complained to Tila in a rare moment of candor. "They abandon strategic positions without apparent cause, only to reappear where sensors detect no viable approach routes." "They're using their knowledge of their own planet," Tila suggested cautiously. "Cave systems, underwater passages, infrastructure networks we didn't consider militarily viable." On the ground, this assessment proved accurate. Human resistance fighters utilized every environmental advantage, from dense urban centers to remote wilderness. When alien forces adapted to urban combat, humans shifted to guerrilla tactics in rural areas. When aliens secured major transportation networks, humans used forgotten tunnels and waterways. Most disturbing to the invaders were the psychological aspects of human resistance. Captured unified soldiers expected torture or execution, standard treatment for defeated forces in their experience. Instead, they encountered humane treatment according to conventions humans had established centuries ago among themselves. This incomprehensible mercy confused the captives, leading many to question the unified doctrine that portrayed humans as primitive savages. Some even began sharing information, particularly after learning that Tila had established secret communication with the human resistance. Their adaptability extends beyond technology, she reported to a growing network of like-minded officers. They learn, adjust, and improve constantly, not over generations, but within days. In his command center, Lyrax received increasingly desperate communications from his fleet. The hunter species had somehow become the hunted, and for the first time in unified systems history, integration protocol was failing. 2 months into the conflict, Operation Chimera launched across all theaters simultaneously. What had appeared to be scattered resistance revealed itself as a coordinated global strategy. Captain Chen stood in the command center at Lookout, watching tactical displays as human forces executed synchronized strikes against unified systems strongholds worldwide. The aliens had established predictable patterns, and humanity had been patient in exploiting them. Beta teams in position at all primary targets, reported his communications officer. Dr. Patel's transmission package is ready for deployment. Chen nodded. Execute Phoenix Protocol. Across the planet, human forces activated devices based on Maya's breakthrough research. Transmitters that interface directly with the aliens' neural communication networks. As the signals activated, confusion spread through enemy ranks. Orders became garbled. Tactical coordination dissolved. Aboard the Unified Systems command vessel, Commander Lyrax watched in horror as his battle network collapsed. Screens flickered with contradictory information as human forces penetrated defenses that should have been impenetrable. They'd compromised our secure channels, his communications officer reported, scales pulsing with panic. Every encryption protocol is failing simultaneously. Impossible, Lyrax hissed. Our quantum algorithms are being counteracted, interrupted a senior technician. The humans have introduced an adaptive virus that evolves faster than our security protocols can respond. In her laboratory beneath Geneva, Maya monitored the virus' progress. The code wasn't entirely her creation. It had begun as a pattern recognition algorithm developed by a 16-year-old student for music composition software, then evolved through collaboration with programmers worldwide. Phase 1 complete, she reported to Director Nwosu. Their command structure is fragmenting. Individual ship commanders are falling back on autonomous protocols. Exactly as anticipated, Nwosu replied, a rare smile crossing her face. Predictability becomes vulnerability. On battlefields worldwide, the strategic shift became immediately apparent. Unified forces, accustomed to centralized command, struggled to adapt to decentralized decision-making. Human forces, by contrast, had trained for precisely this scenario, with field commanders empowered to make tactical decisions based on local conditions. In the skies above Mexico City, Wing Commander Elena Rodriguez led a squadron against a suddenly disorganized alien formation. The enemy vessels, stripped of coordinated fire control, presented vulnerable patterns that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. Their breaking formation, she reported as her pilots executed attack runs that exploited gaps in the aliens' defensive screen, targeting their propulsion systems with modified EMP charges. Across the world, similar scenes unfolded. In the Arabian Sea, submarines surfaced to launch specialized drones against alien vessels, suddenly blind to underwater threats. In the Ural Mountains, infantry units equipped with retrofitted alien weapons overwhelmed outposts, whose automated defenses had been recalibrated to the wrong threat parameters. Aboard his flagship, Lyrax received the unthinkable order from the Unified Council. Strategic withdrawal. Impossible, he protested. We've never abandoned an integration operation. This is no longer classified as integration, came the cold response. The target species has demonstrated Category 1 resistance capabilities. preservation of fleet assets takes priority. As Lurax struggled to process this reversal, an alert sounded. Human forces had breached the vessel's lower decks. Security footage showed them advancing methodically, using tactics adapted from the unified system's own military doctrines, but modified in ways that made them impossible to counter effectively. Leading the boarding party, Captain Chen moved with practiced precision. His team had trained for weeks in simulated environments based on data gleaned from captured vessels. They encountered exactly the resistance they expected and had counters prepared for each defensive measure. When they reached the command deck, Lurax stood waiting, his scales cycling through colors that reflected disbelief, rage, and finally a grudging respect. "You studied us," he said as Chen secured the bridge. "We did," Chen replied simply. "Just as you studied us. The difference is, we learned from what we saw." The captured command vessel's database revealed truths more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. Maya worked alongside Tila, whose defection had provided crucial access codes, translating the vast archive of unified systems records. 6 worlds before us, Maya explained to the Emergency Council, projecting images of diverse planets, all classified as resource extraction complete within the past 80 years. The council chamber fell silent as images of barren landscapes appeared, once thriving ecosystems reduced to strip-mined wastelands. More haunting were recordings of indigenous species, now confined to labor colonies, genetically modified for docility and productivity. "This isn't random expansion," Director Nwosu observed. "They're methodically harvesting habitable worlds following a specific pattern." Captain Chen nodded grimly. "And according to these star charts, Earth is just one of 3 currently targeted planets. The others are already in advanced stages of integration." The revelation shifted humanity's perspective overnight. What had been a fight for survival transformed into something greater, a moral imperative to stop a predatory force that had been consuming civilizations for centuries. In a secured laboratory aboard the captured vessel, Dr. Elise Dubois made another critical discovery. Working with volunteer engineers, she had been analyzing the ship's propulsion system when she noticed an anomaly in its quantum resonance pattern. "The drive core contains communication relays," she reported. "They're designed to transmit across interstellar distances using quantum entanglement." "Can we access them?" Chen asked. "Better," she replied, her eyes bright with possibility. "We can broadcast through them." Within days, a daring plan formed. Using the captured flagship systems, Earth would attempt contact with other targeted worlds, sharing defensive strategies and technological adaptations that had proven effective against the unified systems. Maya and Tila worked around the clock, composing messages that would be comprehensible to diverse species with entirely different evolutionary backgrounds. "Focus on mathematics and physics," Tila suggested. "Universal constants that any spacefaring civilization would recognize." "And add this," Maya said, including schematics for the adaptive virus that had disrupted unified command networks. "It needs to be something they can implement quickly with their existing technology." Commander Lurax, now detained in a comfortable but secure facility, watched these developments with scales shifting between disbelief and reluctant admiration. "You don't understand what you're doing," he told Chen during an interview session. "The unified systems spans 17 sectors. You've captured 1 vessel, but hundreds more will follow." "Perhaps," Chen acknowledged. "But every world you subjugated was isolated. None knew about the others until it was too late. You've never faced coordinated resistance across multiple fronts." Lurax's scales flashed a color Chen had never seen before. According to Tila's emotional translation matrix, it signified conceptual realignment, the biological equivalent of a paradigm shift. On the 93rd day after first contact, humanity transmitted its message across the quantum network. For 48 tense hours, there was no response. Then, suddenly, the communication array activated with incoming signals. First came mathematical acknowledgments, simple prime number sequences confirming receipt. Then, more complex data packets arrived containing defensive innovations from species with technologies that approached problems from entirely different perspectives than humans. "It's working," Maya whispered as new information flooded in. "We're creating an interstellar resistance network." On a view screen, they watched as unified systems vessels above Earth began receiving new orders from their central command. Emergency recall protocols as reports came in of uprisings on previously subjugated worlds. In orbit, the remaining alien fleet prepared for emergency departure. Their mission parameters had fundamentally changed. Earth was no longer classified as a resource extraction target, but something unprecedented in unified systems records, a catalytic threat to the entire integration program. As the ships engaged their drives, Tila stood beside Maya watching them depart. "They never understood," she said softly. "It wasn't your technology or even your adaptability that made humans dangerous." "What was it?" Maya asked. "Your instinct to protect others, even those you've never met. No species they've encountered before had ever fought for anyone but themselves." 1 year after first contact, the Singapore Conference Center hosted representatives from 13 species across the galaxy. The Grand Hall, originally designed for Earth's diplomatic functions, now accommodated beings with physiologies as diverse as their homeworlds. Maya entered alongside Tila, who now served as ambassador for her people. The former science officer's scales shimmered with a serene blue-green that signified profound contentment, an emotional state she had rarely experienced under unified rule. "Still nervous?" Tila asked, noting Maya's rapid heartbeat. Presenting the final charter to representatives of 12 alien civilizations. "Just slightly," Maya replied with a smile. The gathered delegates fell silent as Director Nwosu approached the central podium. Behind her, Captain Chen and Dr. Dubois carried an ornate wooden box containing data crystals holding the Stellar Concordat, the founding document of their unprecedented alliance. "1 year ago, we faced extinction," Nwosu began, her voice carrying across the hall through translation fields that rendered her words comprehensible to all. "Today, we gather not as survivors, but as architects of a new interstellar community founded on principles of mutual respect and cooperation." Across the chamber, species that had been enemies or had never known of each other's existence now sat side by side. The crystalline Polarians, whose silicon-based biology had been particularly valuable to unified mining operations. The methane-breathing Jovari, whose atmospheric engineering expertise had proven crucial in liberating gas giant colonies. The collective consciousness of the Myriad, whose distributed cognition networks had revolutionized the Resistance's communication security. The Stellar Concordat establishes 3 core principles, Nwosu continued. First, the sovereignty of all sentient species over their homeworlds and colonies. Second, the free exchange of knowledge with protection for cultural heritage. And third, mutual defense against any force that threatens our shared values. From his observer's seat, Commander Lyrax watched with scales cycling through complex patterns. As the leading unified systems officer to advocate for diplomatic resolution after the human counteroffensive, he had earned the right to witness this historic moment. The document's final clause establishes the Concordat Exploration Initiative, Nwosu announced, a joint mission to seek out other civilizations, particularly those targeted by the unified systems, not to conquer or exploit, but to offer alliance and protection. As delegates approved the charter with their species' traditional affirmations, Maya found herself reflecting on the improbable journey. What had begun as an invasion had transformed into perhaps the greatest opportunity in human history, to join a community of starfaring civilizations, each contributing unique evolutionary advantages to shared challenges. The first joint mission would launch within months, a vessel crewed by members of all 13 species, equipped with technologies that combined their diverse approaches to science. Humans had contributed adaptive computing, the Polarians their crystal storage systems, the Jovari their atmospheric manipulation, and Tila's people their unparalleled navigation techniques. After the ceremony, Maya found Lirak standing alone by a viewport overlooking Singapore's harbor. "You were right about humans," he acknowledged, his scales now a contemplative purple. "We studied your planet, your technology, your history, but we failed to understand your potential." "That was your fundamental error," Maya replied. "You saw diversity as inefficiency, independence as weakness, cooperation as submission. You never recognized that our greatest strength comes from our differences." As twilight settled over Earth, ships from a dozen worlds illuminated the evening sky, not as invaders, but as allies. Below, crowds gathered to watch the lights, children pointing upward with wonder rather than fear. On the newly commissioned exploration vessel preparing for its maiden voyage, Captain Chen studied the ship's name emblazoned across its hull in 13 different writing systems. The human version, in simple English letters, captured the philosophy that had ultimately saved not just Earth, but countless worlds across the stars. Never underestimate anyone.